My mother asked for a second chance in front of the same two girls she spent years protecting from the truth. She did it at a family dinner, with a white tablecloth between us and her new husband sitting beside her like a witness. My stepsisters were there too. Madison had one hand wrapped around a wine glass. Claire kept smiling at me like we were all adults now, which apparently meant nobody was allowed to remember what happened when we were children. My mother lifted her glass and said, "I just want us to start over." Then she looked at me. "Avery, I know you remember things in a painful way, but I was doing my best." That was the sentence that made me reach into my bag. I put a blue folder on the table. My mother stared at it, confused at first. Then I opened it and slid the first page toward her. It was an email from my 8th grade English teacher. The subject line said, "Avery was locked outside after school." My mother went pale. Not because she had never seen it, because she had. My name is Avery. I am 28 now. I have spent most of my adult life learning how to trust my own memory again because my mother spent my teenage years teaching me that pain only counted if it did not make her life inconvenient. My parents divorced when I was 9. My father moved 2 states away for work a year later. And after that, he became the kind of parent who sent birthday cards late and called me kiddo like that made up for missing whole seasons of my life. My mother, Denise, was the parent who stayed. For a long time, that made her feel like the safe one. Then she met Paul. Paul was polished in a way my mother loved. He wore button-down shirts on Saturdays. He brought flowers when he picked her up. He called her Dee in a soft voice and told her she deserved to be treated well. I was 11, old enough to know my mother was lonely and young enough to believe that if someone made her happy, he must be good. Paul had 2 daughters. Madison was 13, Claire was 12, and from the first weekend they came over, they treated me like furniture that had been left in the wrong room. They did not start with anything obvious. That part matters. Madison would sit in the front seat when my mother drove, even if I had already put my backpack there. Claire would borrow my hair clips and then say she thought they were hers. They called my room the little room and said it would be better as a guest room because I was only there with my mom while they had to come from another house. When I complained, my mother smiled too tightly. "They are adjusting," she said. "You have to give them grace." Grace became the first thing I was expected to give away. After Paul and my mother married, the 3 of them moved into our house. Nobody asked how I felt about that. My mother said it was our house now, and every time she said our, she looked so hopeful that I swallowed my fear. The first week, Madison opened my closet and said, "You have more space than we do." I said, "This is my room." She looked at Claire and laughed. That night, my mother knocked on my door and said Paul thought it would be more fair if I cleared one dresser drawer for the girls when they stayed. They had things they did not want to carry back and forth. I said, "But they have a room." "They share?" Mom said, "You do not," because this was my room before. Her face changed. Not anger. Disappointment. That was worse. "Avery, I need you to not make this hard." So I emptied a drawer. One drawer became 2 shelves in my closet. 2 shelves became half the bathroom cabinet. Half the bathroom cabinet became Madison using my expensive shampoo because, as my mother said, it is just shampoo. Every time I pushed back, the answer was the same. They were adjusting. I was sensitive. I was lucky to have sisters. By 7th grade, the small things had become daily things. My notebooks vanished and reappeared with pages torn out. My favorite sweater came back from Madison's room with foundation on the collar. Claire told girls at school that I wet the bed, which was not true, but truth did not matter much when everyone was already laughing. I told my mother in the kitchen while she was packing lunches. She did not look up. Claire would not say that. She did. Did you hear her say it? 3 people told me. My mother zipped a lunch bag. Then maybe ask yourself why they are trying to start drama. That was the first time I remember feeling the floor tilt. Not because Claire lied. Kids lie. Kids can be cruel. The floor tilted because my mother did not even pause long enough to wonder if I might be telling the truth. The homework incident happened in 8th grade. I had spent 2 weeks on a history project about labor strikes. It was one of those big poster board assignments with a written report, a timeline, and a rubric stapled to the front. I worked on it at the dining table for 3 nights because my room had become too loud. Madison and Claire kept coming in to borrow things and make comments. So I carried the whole project downstairs and spread it out where my mother could see me. The night before it was due, the poster vanished. I found it the next morning in the garage trash can. Coffee had been poured over the front. The timeline had been ripped in half. The rubric was stuck to the bottom of the trash bag. I stood there in my pajamas, holding wet poster board, while Madison watched from the mudroom. She said, "Maybe you should keep better track of your stuff." I screamed. I am not proud of that part, but I did. I screamed so loudly, my mother came running from upstairs. Paul came from the bedroom in a robe. Claire stood behind him with her hand over her mouth, pretending to be shocked. I said, "Madison did it." Madison rolled her eyes and said, "She always blames me." My mother looked at the ruined project, then at me. "Avery, lower your voice." I said, "My project is destroyed." She said, "I see that, but screaming at people is not acceptable." That was the pattern of my childhood in one sentence. She saw the damage. Then she disciplined my reaction. My teacher, Mrs. Halloway, knew something was wrong. I brought in the ruined rubric because I thought maybe it would prove I had done the work. She kept me after class and asked what happened. I told her the short version. She emailed my mother that afternoon. I know because years later, I found the email. At the time, my mother said Mrs. Halloway thought I needed to be more organized. She said, "You have been emotional," Mom told me in the car. "Avery, you cannot keep blaming Madison. And Claire, every time you lose something." I cried so hard I could not breathe. She turned up the radio. That is a sound I still remember. Not the song. The radio volume rising while I cried beside her. It was the sound of my mother choosing not to hear me. The email said something different. It said Mrs. Halloway was concerned because I had arrived at school with a damaged project and seemed afraid to explain what happened at home. It asked whether my mother could meet to discuss household stress and possible bullying between the children. My mother never told me that. Instead, she told me I was making stories. The worst incident happened on a rainy Thursday in November. Madison and Claire were supposed to walk home with me after school because my mother had a late shift at the clinic and Paul was picking up dinner. We lived about 9 blocks from school. It was cold, and the rain had turned the sidewalk silver. Madison said she forgot something in her locker. Claire said she would wait with her. I waited under the awning for 15 minutes. Then 20. Then the school doors locked because after-school clubs had moved to the side entrance. I called Madison. No answer. I called Claire. No answer. I called my mother. It went to voicemail. So I walked home alone in the rain. When I got there, the front door was locked. My key was not in the pocket of my backpack. I knew it had been there that morning. I rang the bell. Nobody answered. I knocked. Nothing. I could hear music inside. I went around to the back door and saw Madison and Claire through the kitchen window. Claire looked right at me, then turned away. Madison laughed. I stood on the back porch for 40 minutes in wet shoes. Our neighbor, Mrs. Reed, came over with an umbrella and asked why I was outside. I was shaking too hard to answer, without sounding ridiculous. She took me into her house, gave me a towel, and called my mother. My mother arrived angry, not scared, angry. She walked into Mrs. Reed's living room and said, "Avery, what did you do now?" Mrs. Reed looked at her like she had misheard. I said, "Madison, and Claire locked me out." My mother said, "They told Paul you refused to come in because you were mad." I said, "They looked at me through the window." My mother pinched the bridge of her nose. "I cannot keep doing this with you." Mrs. Reed said softly, "Denise, she was soaking wet." My mother thanked her for helping, then took me home and told me I needed to apologize for embarrassing the family. I asked what I had done wrong. She said, "You turned misunderstanding into a scene." That night, Madison slipped my house key onto my pillow. No note, just the key. I took a photo of it. I did not know why. I only knew that if I told my mother, she would say I was being dramatic. So I took a photo and emailed it to myself from an address I had made for school clubs. That private email account saved me later. By high school, I had learned the house rules that nobody admitted out loud. Madison and Claire could provoke me. I could not react. They could take my things. I could not accuse them without proof. If I had proof, I was told proof meant I had been waiting to attack them. If I cried, I was unstable. If I was calm, I was cold. There was no version of me my mother would believe if believing me meant making her new family uncomfortable. Paul was not loud. That made him harder to explain. He did not yell at me or call me names. He just stood behind my mother and sighed whenever I spoke. Your mom is under a lot of pressure, he would say, or the girls feel like you hate them, or at some point, you have to decide if you want to be part of this family. I wanted to say I had been part of a family before they arrived. I did not say it. I started saving everything instead. Screenshots, emails, photos, notes with dates, the torn sleeve of a dress Madison borrowed without asking, a picture of my bedroom door after someone wrote liar in lip gloss and wiped it badly enough that the words still showed in the light. A screenshot of Claire texting a group chat. Avery cries if you touch her stuff, so obviously touch her stuff. Once I printed a few things and put them in front of my mother. She looked at the pages and said, "This is not healthy." For 1 second, I thought she meant what they were doing to me. Then she said, "Keeping files on your sisters is not healthy." Your sisters. She always used that phrase when she wanted me to feel guilty. Not Madison and Claire. Not Paul's girls. Your sisters, as if the title was supposed to erase what they did. I said, "They are not my sisters when they treat me like this." My mother slapped the pages down on the counter. "Do you know how hard I have worked to build a stable home for us?" Us. Another word that stopped including me whenever I needed something. The birthday dinner was the moment I stopped expecting my mother to protect me by accident. I turned 16 in March. I did not want a party. I asked for takeout and a movie with my mother, just the two of us, because birthdays had become another place where Madison and Claire competed for attention. My mother said that sounded lonely. "We are not doing separate little camps in this house." She said, "Family celebrates together." So Paul booked a restaurant. Madison invited 2 friends from school. Claire invited 1. I did not invite anyone because by then I had learned not to bring witnesses into our house unless I wanted them used against me. At dinner, Madison gave me a gift bag. Inside was a cheap diary with a pink lock on it. Claire leaned over and said, "So you can write down all your tragedies." Everyone laughed. Not my mother at first. She looked at my face, and for 1 second I thought she might stop it. Then Paul chuckled and said, "Come on, Avery." That one was funny. My mother smiled at him, then looked at me. "It is just a joke," she said quietly. The server brought a cake with my name on it. Madison had asked them to write Drama Queen Avery in red icing. I saw it before my mother did. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. The server looked uncomfortable. Claire had her phone out already. I pushed back from the table. My mother hissed, "Sit down." I said, "That is not my cake." Madison said, "See?" Claire laughed into her hand. My mother grabbed my wrist under the table. "Do not ruin your own birthday." That was the sentence she chose. Not stop it, not apologize, not take the cake away. Do not ruin your own birthday. I sat there while they sang. I did not blow out the candles. Madison did, and everyone pretended it was another joke. The next day at school, 3 people asked me if I had cried over a cake. Claire had posted a picture to a private story with the caption, "Sweet 16, and still acting 6. I went to the bathroom and threw up. When my mother found out I had left school early, she came into my room furious. I showed her the screenshot. She said, "Why are you collecting things like this?" I said, because you keep saying they do not happen. She said, Avery, you have to stop building a case against your own family. That sentence became one of the pages in the blue folder too. I wrote it down that night with the date, the restaurant name, and the name of the server who had whispered sorry when she set the cake down. Years later, when I was preparing for the dinner, I almost left that page out. It felt childish in a way the emails did not. A cake, a caption, a joke. Then I realized that was how my mother had trained me to think. If the cruelty sounded small, I was supposed to throw it away before anyone else had to answer for it. So I printed it. The screenshot was blurry, but the red icing was clear. Drama Queen Avery. Under it, Claire's caption, Sweet 16 and still acting 6. And in my handwriting from that night, one sentence. Mom told me I ruined my own birthday. The final year I lived there, the school counselor called my mother twice. I did not know that until years later either. The counselor had noticed I spent lunch in the library and avoided going home after school. She wrote that I appeared anxious about family conflict and reported repeated issues with step-siblings damaging property. My mother told me the counselor said I should try harder socially. I believed her. That is the part that still makes me angry. I believed my mother over my own life. If she said I was too sensitive, I became less sensitive. If she said I was remembering wrong, I replayed events until I was exhausted. If she said I had made a scene, I apologized for the scene even when someone else had lit the match. I left for college at 18 and did not come home for Thanksgiving. My mother called me selfish. I came home for Christmas because I still wanted her to miss me enough to change. Madison and Claire spent Christmas Eve telling everyone I had become stuck up at school. My mother told me in the pantry that I should not act like I was better than the family. I went back to campus 2 days early. After that, contact became smaller. Fewer calls, shorter texts, no weekend visits. If my mother asked why, I said I was busy. Busy was easier than saying, I do not feel safe with you. At 23, I stopped going to family holidays. At 25, I stopped answering group texts. At 27, I told my mother I needed distance unless she was willing to talk honestly about what happened in that house. She sent back 3 paragraphs. I am sorry you feel that way. I did the best I could. You were not an easy child. That last sentence was the cleanest summary of our relationship I had ever received. In her version, I had been hard to love, so the things that happened to me became understandable. I did not answer. Then, 6 months before the dinner, my mother started therapy. I know because she told me in the first text she sent after almost a year of silence. I have been working on myself. I would like a second chance with my daughter. My daughter, not Avery. My daughter, like a role she could claim when she missed it. I stared at the message for a long time. A younger version of me would have cried. A younger version of me would have typed too much. She would have tried to make the opening big enough for the truth to come through. I wrote, "What do you want a second chance to repair?" She answered 2 hours later. "The distance between us." I wrote, "What caused the distance?" She did not answer until the next day. A lot of pain on both sides. There it was. Both sides. The soft blanket people throw over an uneven table, so no one has to see which leg is missing. I asked again, "What did I say happened?" She wrote, "I know you felt pushed out when Paul and the girls moved in." Felt. That word did more work than any apology she had ever offered. It turned actions into emotions. It turned evidence into interpretation. It turned my childhood into a misunderstanding she could be sorry I experienced without being sorry she allowed. I almost blocked her then. Instead, I opened the old email account. I had not logged in for years. The password still worked on the 3rd try. The inbox loaded slowly, full of school newsletters, college application reminders, and dust from a life I had tried not to touch. Then I searched my mother's name, Denise. The emails appeared. Mrs. Holloway's note about the ruined project. The counselor's meeting request. A forwarded message from Mrs. Reed after the rain incident, asking my mother if I was feeling better and gently saying, I do want to clarify that Avery was outside for quite some time before I brought her in. There were photos too. The key on my pillow, the damaged poster, the lip gloss on my door, screenshots I had forgotten saving. I sat on my apartment floor until after midnight, opening each one. The strangest feeling was not anger. It was relief. I had proof that I had not invented myself. For years, I had carried those memories like contraband. I knew what happened, but part of me still waited for my mother to tell me I was exaggerating. Seeing the records again made something inside me stand up. When my mother invited me to dinner, I almost said no. She wrote, Paul, and the girls would love to see you. Maybe we can all start fresh. All. Start fresh. The old script in a nicer font. I asked, will Madison and Claire be there? She wrote, yes, but only because they are family too. I asked, do they know what you want to discuss? She wrote, I do not want this to become a blame session. That was when I decided to go. Not because I believed she would change, because I finally understood what she meant by second chance. She wanted a second chance to have the daughter, who came back without making anyone else uncomfortable. I printed the emails. I printed the screenshots. I printed the photos. I put everything in a blue folder because blue was the color of the binder I used in 8th grade, the one Madison threw into the trash with my history project. On the night of the dinner, I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose. I wanted them seated before I walked in. My mother stood up too quickly when she saw me. Avery. She reached for a hug. I let her touch my shoulders for 1 second and then stepped back. Paul gave me a tight smile. Madison said I looked good. Claire said, it has been forever, like time was the only thing between us. The restaurant was dim and expensive, the kind of place my mother used to say was too nice for children when I was little. She had ordered appetizers already. That annoyed me more than it should have. Even now, she had staged the evening before I arrived. For 20 minutes, everyone performed. My mother asked about work. Paul talked about his golf league. Madison mentioned her new house. Claire told a story about her toddler biting another child at daycare, and everyone laughed like it was charming. Then my mother lifted her glass. I wanted tonight because life is short, she said, and because I think we all deserve a chance to move forward. Madison nodded. Claire reached across the table and touched my mother's wrist. My mother looked at me with wet eyes. Avery, I know you remember things in a painful way, but I was doing my best. That was when I put the folder on the table. Nobody spoke. The folder made a small sound against the plate. I opened it and slid out the first email. This is from Mrs. Halloway. I said, 8th grade, the history project Madison destroyed. Madison laughed once. Oh my God, are we really doing childhood grievances? I looked at her. We are doing records. My mother stared at the page. I said, you told me my teacher said I needed to be more organized. The email says she was concerned that I came to school with a damaged project and seemed afraid to explain what happened at home. Paul shifted in his chair. My mother said, I do not remember that email. I slid the next page over. You replied. Her hand froze. In her reply, my mother had written, Avery has been struggling to adjust to her stepsisters and sometimes blames them when she is upset. We are handling it as a family. Claire looked down at her lap. Madison said, that does not prove I did anything. I took out the photo of the poster in the trash. Coffee stains, torn timeline, rubric stuck to the plastic bag. No, I said, it proves Mom knew there was a real incident and told me my teacher thought I was disorganized. My mother's eyes filled. I was trying to keep peace. There it was. The first true sentence of the night. I said, peace for who? The table went still. My mother wiped under one eye. Avery, I had just remarried. I was trying to help 3 girls become sisters. You had one daughter. I said, and two girls who needed boundaries. Madison put her glass down too hard. We were kids. I nodded. Yes. Which is why this folder is not about whether 12-year-old Claire was cruel or 13-year-old Madison was jealous. It is about the adult who kept telling me it was not happening. My mother whispered, "That is not fair." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had spent half my childhood hearing that exact sentence whenever fairness finally looked in my direction. I pulled out the next record. This is from Mrs. Reed. My mother looked confused. "The neighbor," I said, "the day I was locked outside in the rain." Claire's face changed. Just for a second. "I saw it." I said, "You remember?" She said, "I remember you being dramatic." I slid the printed message across the table. Mrs. Reed had written, "Avery was outside in the rain for quite some time before I brought her in. She was very cold and upset. I hope everything is all right." My mother stared at it. "You told me Madison, and Claire said I refused to come inside because I was mad." I said, "Then you made me apologize for embarrassing the family." Paul cleared his throat. "Avery, your mother was under pressure. Blended families are hard." I turned to him. "I know. I was the blend." He did not answer. Madison said, "This is insane. Who keeps this stuff for 15 years? I said, "Someone who was told it did not exist." That landed. I know it did because my mother closed her eyes. For the first time that night, she looked less like a woman asking for healing and more like a woman realizing the room had evidence in it. Claire pushed her chair back slightly. "I was a kid," she said. "You were?" I said, "and Mom was not." I took out the group chat screenshot. Claire had written, "Avery cries if you touch her stuff, so obviously touch her stuff." Claire reached for the page. I moved it back. No, my voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. "You do not get to take another thing from me." She pulled her hand away. My mother said, "I never saw that." "No," I said, "but you saw the door." I placed the photo of my bedroom door on the table. The word liar was still visible in smeared lip gloss. I remembered standing in the hallway, holding a sponge, while my mother told me to stop crying because Paul was on a work call. My mother covered her mouth. Madison stared at the picture. She said nothing. That silence told me more than any apology would have. I said, "You told me I wrote it myself for attention." My mother shook her head. "I would never say that." I took out the birthday screenshot next. The cake, the red icing, drama queen Avery. Claire made a sound like she had been slapped. "That was a joke," she said. I said, "I was 16. Madison looked away. My mother whispered, "I did not know they wrote that." I tapped the note under the photo. "You told me not to ruin my own birthday." Paul stared at the table. For once, he did not tell me my mother had been under pressure. I said, "That is what I mean when I say you rewrote things. They humiliated me, and you made my reaction the problem." I turned to the last section of the folder, the text messages. My hands were steady now. That surprised me. I had imagined this moment so many times when I was younger, and in every version I was crying, shaking, begging her to see me, but I was not begging anymore. I read the first message aloud. "Stop making stories. Avery, you are hurting this family." My mother flinched. I read the second. "If you keep accusing the girls, Paul will think you do not want us to be happy." The third, "You are old enough to understand that not every feeling needs to become an emergency." I set the page down. "You wrote those after I sent you photos." Nobody moved. The server came by then, carrying entrees, and stopped when she saw the table. My mother said, "Could we have a few minutes?" The plates disappeared again. For some reason, that almost broke me. Not the emails, not the photos, the untouched food. My mother had wanted this to be a pleasant dinner with a neat, emotional dessert. Instead, the truth had arrived before the main course. She leaned toward me. "What do you want me to say?" I looked at her. That was the question I had waited almost 20 years to hear. When I was 14, I would have had a list. Say you believe me. Say you saw it. Say you should have protected me. Say you are sorry. You made me apologize to people who hurt me. At 28, the question sounded smaller, because if she still had to ask, she was still looking for the minimum payment. I said, I wanted you to know that I did not come here with feelings. I came with records. Her tears spilled over. I am sorry you were hurt. I said, no. Her face tightened. No. That is the apology you give when you still want distance from what happened. I was not only hurt. I was not a storm that passed through your house. I was your daughter, and I kept asking for help, and you kept deciding your marriage was more fragile than I was. Paul said, that is enough. I turned to him. You are right. Then I looked back at my mother. It was enough years ago. Madison muttered. So what? You want us all to grovel? No, I said. I wanted my mother to stop lying about what she knew. Claire started crying then. I did not know if it was guilt or humiliation or anger at being exposed. Maybe all three. My mother reached toward her automatically. That was when I knew, even at that table, even with the proof in front of her, my mother's first instinct was still to comfort one of them. I watched her hand move toward Claire, then stop halfway, like she realized I was watching. Too late. Some moments do not need a speech. I closed the folder. My mother said, please do not leave like this. I said, this is the only honest way I have ever left you. She started crying harder. Avery, I cannot change the past. I know, I said. That is why I needed you to stop changing the story. I stood up. Paul said my name, sharp and warning. I did not look at him. Madison said, you are really going to destroy Mom over stuff from middle school? I picked up the folder. No. She destroyed my trust when I was in middle school. I am just done pretending it survived. My mother whispered, I am your mother. That one hurt. It still hurt. I wish I could say it did not. I wish I could say the folder made me bulletproof. It did not. There is no evidence strong enough to make it painless when your mother reaches for the title after refusing the work. I said, then you know what you were supposed to be. I left before the food came back. Outside, the air was cold. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel and waited for the shaking to start. It came after about 30 seconds. My whole body trembled like it had been holding a door shut for years and had finally let go. My phone lit up before I even started the engine. My mother, please come back inside. Then Madison, that was cruel. Then Claire, I hope humiliating everyone made you feel better. Then Paul, your mother is devastated. You made your point. I saved every message, old habits, but I did not answer. The next morning, my mother sent a longer text. I barely slept. I know you are angry, but ambushing me at dinner was unfair. I was not perfect, but I loved you. I hope someday you understand that I was trying to hold a family together. There it was again. The family, not me. I wrote one reply. You did hold it together. You used me as the tape. Then I muted her. For 3 weeks, relatives I had not heard from in years found my number. My aunt said my mother had cried so hard she could barely speak. My cousin said everyone makes mistakes. My grandmother said keeping records was cold and unnatural. I asked each of them the same question. Did she show you the records? None of them said yes, so I stopped answering them too. Madison posted something vague online about people weaponizing childhood because they were unhappy adults. Claire commented with 3 hearts. My mother liked it, then unliked it, then called me at midnight. I let it ring. The next day, she left a voicemail. Her voice sounded small. Avery, I do remember some of it now. Some of it. I think maybe I was scared. Paul and I were new. The girls were struggling. You were so angry all the time, and I did not know how to fix it. I listened to the voicemail twice. There was almost an apology in it. Almost. But even then, She placed my anger before the reason for it. She made my pain one more problem she had been forced to manage. I deleted the voicemail. Not because I was not tempted. I was. I wanted a mother. I still wanted one. That is the ugliest part of stories like this. You can know someone failed you and still miss the person they should have been. You can close the door and still wish someone safe was on the other side. But wanting a mother did not mean I had to keep offering the job to a woman who only wanted the title. A month after the dinner, a small envelope arrived at my apartment. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was one page. My mother had written, "I am sorry, I did not protect you." That was all. One sentence. For a full minute, I just stared at it. Then I felt something I did not expect. Not peace, not forgiveness, grief. Because that sentence was what I had needed at 13. At 14, at 17, packing for college with one eye on the hallway, because I still did not trust Madison not to take something. At 23, skipping Thanksgiving and pretending I liked being alone. It arrived 15 years late, and it did not come with the childhood it would have saved. I put the letter in the blue folder. Then I put the folder in a storage box on the top shelf of my closet. My mother has sent 3 more messages since then. The first said she hoped we could talk one day. The second said therapy was helping her see things differently. The third said she missed her daughter. I have not answered. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I will not. I am not making promises just because she finally found one true sentence. What I know is this. My mother wanted a second chance, but she wanted it before she had named the first failure. She wanted a fresh start while Madison and Claire got to keep the old ending. She wanted me to come back as proof that the family had not been built on my silence. I could not give her that. The records she said did not exist are real. So is the daughter who kept them. And this time, I believe her.